Eagle is a red engine who lives on the island of Soda. He is mixed traffic, meaning he can pull both trucks and coaches quite easily. Now it's been some time since Sir Topham Hatt had retired Edward the Blue Engine after his heroic act of saving Wellsworth from the tar wagons. Now Edward occasionally felt left out as he watched the bigger engines leaving for work. But Eagle was always there to tell Edward the news whenever he wasn't working. This made Edward feel a little bit better. One day, after Eagle had finished his work, he went to visit Edward as usual. However, when he reached the sheds, what he saw made him grind to a halt. He saw the bigger engines all making fun of Edward, and Edward did not look happy.
The driver won't choose you again. He wants big, strong engines like us.
Eagle could tell that what the bigger engines had said hurt Edward deeply, because deep down he knew they were right. Edward had not been out for a long time, and he began to feel sad. Eagle was so disgusted by what he saw, he left without saying a word. Eagle went to see the Wellsworth and Suttery tank engines, and he told them everything he had seen at the sheds. "We are getting greatly outnumbered," said Adam. "I never liked those big engines, always thinking they're so great." "Eagle," whispered Lily, "something must be done." And everyone else agreed, but none knew what. At last, Eagle said, "I can do that." He whispered something to the others. Then he puffed away. Next morning, Eagle arrived at the sheds a little earlier than usual, before the driver and fireman had a chance to arrive. Then he said to his crew, "Now, driver, now, fireman." Just then, a driver and fireman appeared to start work. The driver looked at Edward and said, "Can you guess what he said?" "I think you can guess."
What's the matter? Are you feeling sad? Would you like to come out today?
And Edward said,
"Oh, yes, please." So the fireman lit the fire and made a nice lot of steam. Then the driver pulled the lever and Edward puffed away. The other engines were very cross at being left behind.
A few moments later, when the real driver and fireman came along to start work, Eagle told them just how badly the other engines had been treating Edward. The driver and fireman agreed with him, and they told the other engines what bad engines they were and took Eagle out instead. Eagle left the sheds, feeling the glare of all the other engines as he left. Thanks to Eagle, Edward had the best day out in a long time. Edward worked hard all day. All the children ran to wave as he passed by. And the coaches thought he was very kind. And despite being out of service for so long, Edward performed like a young engine. And Edward worked so hard, the driver was very impressed and promised to take him out again the next day. I can't believe it! 98462 almost shrieked. They let that bucket of bolts Edward out today! I know, agreed a visiting green engine. I haven't been here very long, but I can tell that Edward is an engine with very little power. You got that right, snapped 98462. Ever since you came here, he's been nothing but a useless old steam pot which belongs in a museum. Gordon, despite all his arrogance, knew right from wrong, and he knew that 98462 was nothing more than just a rude engine. Edward's design, he began, was useful at one point in time, but then modernization came, and there became less use for engines of his class, so bigger, tender engines like us were needed. However, that does not mean that Edward is any less useful than us in any way, though he may be smaller than us. But of course, his importance will never equal to mine, as I am the biggest and the strongest engine here. 98462, 87546, 76624, and the visiting green engine all began to argue with Gordon. When all of a sudden, they were interrupted by Eagle. Ah, talking about Edward, I see? Yes, said Gordon. I just finished telling these engines how Edward is a really useful fellow. Good. Well, then I suggest it be your best interest to keep it that way. Speak of the engine, I hear that Edward might be going out again tomorrow. What do you think of that? The big engines were about to protest when Edward came puffing back to the sheds, tired but happy.
And he told the other engines in the shed that night, I'm going out again tomorrow. What do you think of that? But he didn't hear what they thought, for he was so tired and happy that he fell asleep at once.
Don't worry, little Edward. I'll soon show you how important I am when I pull the express tomorrow.